If you ask many people, they will tell you that the British system has always been against black people, has always stereotyped Jamaicans. That's just how it is. But that's largely due to certain types of Jamaicans that got an opportunity to go to the UK, and they squandered the opportunity and they made things bad for the rest of them. This case right here, my attention was brought to it, and this is when the charter flights started, and then they started to push to get all Jamaicans out of the UK, even the windrush generation. They even turned on Jamaicans who had been living in the UK since they were 2 years old, who were deported in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. If you can imagine going somewhere, migrating to another land at 2 years old, and then at 40 something, you're told this is not your home, you need to leave. That situation started happening more than ever before. It was not by coincidence. It was by things like these happening, this story that I'm about to tell you about. Welcome back to SouFLoTV again, everybody. It is your host with the most. The message of today is what we do overseas, believe it or not, affects all our fellow countrymen once they try to get into the same space that we have been privileged enough to occupy first ahead of them, right? So in other words, leave your bad behavior at home and bring your best foot forward when you migrate to somebody else's country. Here is one of the key cases that started the flights, the charter flights, leaving rapidly from the UK and started the whole windrush thing. A Jamaican drug dealer who battered to death an innocent woman 7 years after he should have been deported was jailed for more than 26 years at the Old Bailey today. Lloyd Byfield. Lloyd Byfield was 48 years old. Lloyd Byfield was a Jamaican who came to the UK in the year 2000. Lloyd Byfield used a claw hammer and a kitchen knife to murder a young British white woman named Leanne Duffy in her Walthamstow flat in front of a 6-year-old child. Let that part sink in. See, Leanne Duffy, the reason I said a white woman is because race does play a part. See, the British view England as theirs, white people's country. You are a guest in these white people's country if you are black. For you to be allowed as an immigrant, a grown person, to enter into that country, and you end up killing one of their daughters, one of their mothers, a white woman, you are looked at in a different light. I don't care who wants to argue it, backwards or forwards, that's exactly what it is. You know me, I speak the truth. Speak the truth and speak it ever causes what it will. He who hides the wrong he does will do the wrong things still. They taught us that since grade school. So I don't sugarcoat it, I say it for what it is. Now here's how it went. Judge Nicholas Cook, he told Byfield, the Jamaican, that he may never be released from prison. And then the judge launched into a furious attack on the Home Office failings. With a superior judge going in this hard on the Home Office, it started to shine a light on the inconsistencies within the Home Office. The Home Office, up until about 2015, had been slacking off with the deportations, had been slacking off with getting immigrants out of their country who they believe were not supposed to be there. Once this case happened, oh, you best believe it was full throttle right ahead. And the good ended up suffering for the bad because they were sending so many people out. The plan had become to get as many of them out of the country as possible. They even attacked the windrush generation. So Byfield, the Jamaican, he had been allowed to stay in Britain after he claimed that he had married in the UK after he arrived from Jamaica in 2000. See, they had tried to deport him before, and he said, but I'm married here, and I have my marriage papers, and I have my family here, blah, blah, blah. I have a spouse, all these things. So he was allowed to stay and to try to fight the immigration process the legal way. Byfield had become known locally as a violent local drug dealer who carried a hammer and a knife, and that was his weapons of choice. You know, some people carry a gun, and then you will hear somebody say, yo, don't mess with him, you know, because him always have a gun. That was his reputation in the streets in the UK. Don't mess with him, you know, because he's coming through with that hammer and he's coming through with that knife. You getting one of them, mate. But as a desperate girlfriend whom he attacked with a chisel in 2004 and then carried out a knife point burglary. So Byfield had been allowed to stay in Britain after claiming that he had married into the country after arriving from Jamaica in 2000. But he had a separate girlfriend from whom he attacked with a chisel in 2004. Remember, he came in 2000. 4 years into him being in the UK, he was already on law enforcement radar. The woman he was with at this point, he attacked her with a chisel. A chisel is more like a long screwdriver. And then he carried out a knife point burglary, held somebody up and robbed them at knife point. So you can see that he was becoming a nuisance, someone who they would definitely want to get rid of. 3 years later, Byfield was ordered to be deported after he had served some time, but he remained free in London to murder Miss Duffy, who is another ex-girlfriend, out of jealousy that September of that year. Yes, Miss Duffy, the white woman who he killed in front of the 6-year-old child, was also a girlfriend of his at one point. See, the relationship had gone sour and they had parted ways, and Miss Duffy had moved on, and Miss Duffy had someone else. It is reported that Byfield went to Miss Duffy's house and confronted Miss Duffy and told her that he wanted her back and he didn't approve of her new relationship and who she was with and all that. And Miss Duffy wasn't trying to hear any of it, and Miss Duffy was attacked. The paperwork says that Byfield inflicted 14 separate injuries to Miss Duffy. And when the 6-year-old child who was witnessing it tried to intervene, stop doing that to my mommy, Byfield struck the child as well in the head. He pleaded guilty to murder and he was jailed for life. And then he was ordered to serve a minimum of 26 years and a half before he is eligible for parole. 26 years at the age of 40 something. He will be about 70 something. He's 48. He serves 26 years. He will be an old man when he gets out, if he ever gets out. But according to the judge said you may never be released from prison. The judge said you may never be released from prison with your record and with regards to the circumstances of the offending. The most careful consideration will need to be given in the event of your release ever being contemplated. Meaning, 26 years from now, when he goes before a parole board, careful consideration will be given if he is allowed to even go before a parole board. In other words, more than likely, they're going to deny him parole 26 years from now because of the gruesome way that he took this woman's life. The judge said, you took a knife and you took a hammer to the scene of the killing, which means you planned to do what you did before you even got there. It was premeditated. I have been told that you were in the habit of carrying these things with you in connection with your trade as the drug dealer, but I don't regard that as significant mitigation. In other words, the judge is saying he's been told that this is regular for this man. He carries these tools, a knife and a hammer, and that's what he's known for. But the judge says, I don't regard that as significant mitigation, meaning in this case, it will hold nothing because it's besides the point. But it still serves to illustrate how unwise it was for your continued presence in the jurisdiction to be tolerated after you had been convicted of an offense of serious violence on a woman. In other words, the judge was saying here, it was very unwise for the Home Office and the authorities to still have you here in the UK, even after you had been convicted of serious offense of violence against a woman before, referring to his first case, which was in 2004 when he attacked the woman that he was with then with the chisel and served a couple of years. I don't know if steps were taken then to minimize the risk you presented to women here in the UK. It is, in my view, essential that when men are sentenced for such crimes of domestic violence, the underlying risk to woman is addressed. You, sir, you were to be deported, but for some reason that cannot be explained to me, it was not activated, and you were able to remain here in the UK amongst good people and kill an innocent woman. You killed a woman in the presence of a 6-year-old child, a good woman. And then, when she must have realized that her end had come, she thought of the child and she told her to hide. It was a 6-year-old child, that was witnessing her mother being bludgeoned with a hammer and stabbed multiple times. When the child did not listen to the mom because the child was so concerned about helping her and the child intervened, you struck the child as well. That required a heart of stone. The judge said, this murder may have been prevented if the systems had worked as they should have done. This judge vowed to go up against the Homeland Security in the UK and the Home Office and to push the agenda for anybody from this type of lineage to be deported as soon as possible. He says this murder may have been prevented if the systems that were put in place to work had actually done so. When Byfield gave himself up to the police 2 weeks after the murders, he claimed that he had loved Miss Duffy. He said, "Me love her, you know. I was in deep, deep love with her, you know. But love make you do some stupid things," quote unquote. The judge said, that's not love. Love is loving and caring and cherishing. This was possessive brutality, mirroring a wholly wrong attitude to women. This is the pinnacle of domestic violence, a scourge that affects the lives of women and children. Obviously, a child is now traumatized for life, witnessing her mother being killed in front of her, even trying to help and getting hit in the process. Feeling overpowered and helpless. That child will carry that memory for the rest of her life. And if you think about how bloody the scene must have been, to be beaten with a hammer and stabbed multiple times in the same process, it's not like getting one gunshot or one stab and the person who did it ran off. He inflicted 14 serious blows to her in front of this child, which killed her. Right. So, the interesting thing about this is how Byfield, the Jamaican drug dealer, as he was known in this story, is his definition of love. His definition of love, or love making him do some serious things, beating a woman with a hammer and stabbing her multiple times. And he is convinced that this is love. You know, I'm not trying to make any excuses for him, but I can go back to the way how we were raised, and I can also go back to our history. Our love has always had pain in it. The people that love us hurt us the most. I'll leave that for a whole other video. Now, as Byfield had no fixed address, because he was just here, there, and everywhere in the UK at this point, as he was being led off to his cell, members of the young lady's family, they yelled out, "You scum! I hope you rot in hell, you dirty scum!" And that was the end of Byfield. 26 years from now, 26 and a half years from now, he'll be trying to get out of prison in the UK by going before a parole board, because that is what the paperwork says. He will have to serve 26 and a half years before he is up for parole. But the judge has already told him, you may never get out. And he shouldn't. Where are they going to send him after? Jamaica doesn't want him. What good is he going to be to Jamaica? Keep him right there in the UK, right there in prison where he actually belongs. Again, the message, end of the day, is what we do affects our fellow countrymen when we are in other people's places. I'll leave this one right here. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Tell me what you think about this one. And I'll catch you on the next video. I'm out. Peace.